Hebrews refer to foreign populations that migrated into Canaan, from the south. The first recorded Hebrews were Abraham and his family. The native populations of Canaan were the Hittites and Amorites, jointly referred to as Canaanites. Civil war erupted among the Hittite tribes, and the Horites began to enslave the Hivites. Around the same time, there was influx of more populations from the south into Canaan. Where the Cushan immigrants interacted with the Amorites was called Haran. Certain Cushan tribes mingled with the Amorites was called Aram, and the mixed nation that emerged was called the Arameans. Abraham and his family left the Amorites country and moved to the regions of the Hittites in western Canaan. While there, a prince called Abimelech had rebelled against his father, king of the Hittites, and established his own nation of the Amalekites. Abraham's Hebrews were scattered across the Hittite cities. It is worth noting that the Arameans are alternatively called Arabs. Though, the Arameans designation may also be reserved for another mixed race that emerged as a result of intermingling between the invading Cushan armies and the Canaanite prisoners. This group was distinctively referred to as the Turks, though some are considered Arabs as well. Likewise, the Hebrews were a branch of the Turks who forged alliances with the native Canaanites. Egypt would then refer to the regions of Canaan where Abimelech ruled, and spread as far as the part of Canaan occupied by Abraham and his Hebrews. This corresponds to modern France all the way to the Iberian Peninsula. Egyptian colonies were established in northern Africa and parts of Arabia. More of their Cushan allies who settled in the southern regions of the Egyptian colonies and in Eastern Europe became the Ethiopians. The Thracians, now referred to as Arabs or Arameans, were sandwiched in between these two groups of Ethiopians. Those in Thrace appear in the biblical text as the tribe of Benjamin. The Berechites and the Gerarites were clans of the Benjaminites who affiliated themselves with the Amorites. They faced similar fate as the Amorites, who lived under oppression in their own country or were exiled to the Cushan country. The first nation of Israel were the Hittites or Hivites, who were suffering under Abimelech and his allies. They stayed loyal to their king despite what they went through. Though Abimelech was defeated, the Hebrews who parted ways with Abraham took over control of the Hivite land, so they became the Egyptians. The first pharaoh was a soldier in Abraham's army. In non-biblical sources, the Amorites are called Thracians, while Abraham and his Hebrews were Midianites. Their home country was the Minian kingdom, that was located in the southern continent that was consumed by water and submerged into the Indian Ocean. While a section of the Minians settled in Thrace and other regions of Eastern Europe, Abraham and his faction who moved west became the French, also called Phoenicians. King Charles of the French established the Carolingian dynasty. His nephew, called Carloman, parted ways with Charles and established the Carling dynasty in Germany. During that time, Tudor the Senior had defeated his brother Owen's rebellion, but his own sons called Owen and Jasper Tudor revived their uncle's rebellion. It is Owen Tudor and his brother Jasper, whom the biblical text refers to as Abimelech. One reigned in the days of Abraham and the other in the days of his Isaac. The second Abimelech refers to Jasper Tudor, while Isaac refers to his stepson Henry Tudor. When a section of the Hebrews parted ways with Abraham, this refers to Catherine Valois family and their followers. Catherine Valois was a cousin of King Charles, while her Hebrew followers settled in England as the Scots and the Irish. Catherine had married one of the Cushan soldiers in her army and they had a son called Henry. Catherine joined Owen in his rebellion and her husband became a mercenary in Owen's army. When Catherine's French husband died in action, she married Owen, but the marriage did not last as Owen also died alongside his father when they met in battle. The Horites refers to the Danes who joined Owen's rebellion, while the Hivites were the English who remained loyal to the king. While Catherine still lived with Owen, she was given an English maid, chosen from English women enslaved by Owen. Later on, when Owen got a Cushan magus called Zerko, and brought him to his court, the magus raped the maiden and she conceived, and consequently, she gave birth to Conrad. While the biblical sources referred to Henry as Isaac, Conrad became Ishmael. When Owen died, Catherine never married Jasper, and she continued to live among the Scots, while her son Henry was adopted by Jasper and continued to live with the Irish. Many years later, the immigrants conspired against the entire Tudor family. The Prince of Wales, Edmund Tudor, succeeded his father as the King of England. As a gesture of peace, he married Catherine Valois as his second wife, and had Mary with her as his first child. Edmund organized a banquet and invited his brother Jasper. The foreigners in Jasper's camp joined him to the Tudor court. While the feast was ongoing, the mercenaries decided to abduct the little Princess Eleanor Elizabeth, the youngest daughter of Edmund, with his first wife, Lady Margaret Beaufort. The foreigners wanted to install one of their own as King England, and the best-suited candidate was Henry. They asked Jasper to deliver marriage proposal to Edmund, who consented. However, due to the fact that Mary, who was the eldest, was a sibling of Henry, as both were children of Catherine Valois, they could not marry each other. Both Jasper and Edmund agreed that Elizabeth was too small for marriage. Henry and the mercenaries felt that Jasper had betrayed them and conspired with Edmund to lock Henry out of the Tudor family and the English throne. So they decided to proceed with the marriage plan and abducted Elizabeth. Edmund's royal guards tried to stop the abduction, but they were overran and the royal court fell to Henry and his men. Edmund was killed in the process. Elizabeth and her uncle Jasper were kept in detention. Lady Margaret Beaufort fled to her relatives in Italy, where she briefly reigned as queen, under the title of Anne Boleyn. Catherine Valois and her daughter Mary fled to Navarre with the remnants of the Tudors, including Conrad and his mother, who was also a Tudor. King Charles dispatched a relief force to England, under leadership of his general called Louis. Upon arriving in England, Conrad and his Danish band mutinied, joined Henry and killed Jasper together with all the remnant of Tudors in England, save for Elizabeth, who was still kept in detention. Louis was among the French soldiers taken captive by Henry. After this, Conrad proceeded to Italy, where he killed Anne Boleyn, paving way for Henry to assume the throne. Henry found Louis useful and admitted him into his army. The Scots were not pleased with this move and they quickly installed Mary as Queen of England, since she was the eldest child of Edmund. However, roughly 4 months into her reign, the Scots forced Mary to abdicate. Before Henry assumed the throne, the only legitimate way to do it was through consummating the planned marriage with Elizabeth. Henry was almost as old as Edmund, whose daughter Elizabeth was around 7 years of age at the time. Certain English nobles disapproved of union with the immigrants through the forced marriage, terming it rough wooing. They conspired with some of Henry's royal guards, who helped Elizabeth fled from detention. She was taken to the fort of Canossa and was hastily crowned Queen of England. The Scots and Irish began to allege involvement of Mary and Louis, claiming that the two conspired against Henry. Many years later, the fort of Canossa fell to Conrad, who slaughtered everyone there, including the Queen. The Queen left behind a son called John, who was raised by Catherine Valois and his Aunt Mary. When he turned 5 years old, Catherine married her cousin King Charles and moved to the king's court with Mary and John. Around 7 years later, Louis, who had mended relations with King Charles, reverted to the service of Henry. He staged a coup against Charles and the entire French royal household was exiled to Arabia. At this point, the Hebrews ruled the land. When finally John came of age and returned to France to claim his inheritance, he was defeated and sold to Sicily by Louis. 3 years later, he was joined by the Stuart in a Servile uprising. With the Stuarts' help, he conquered Italy and spread his influence across Europe as far as England. He defeated both Henry and Louis, whom he relegated to his vassals. This makes end of the Egyptian captivity and the restoration of Judah. In the biblical text, John appears as Moses in the narrative relating to the Egyptian captivity. John was now the Caesar and the Stuart the spiritual head. Conflict known as the investiture controversy erupted. The steward was too proud, and could not be the Caesar's subordinate. He stirred Henry, Louis and Conrad to rebellion against the king. The steward tricked the king by pretentiously reaching out for a peaceful settlement. To consummate the peace agreement, a feast was organized and the steward came with his allies. As John did not expect war, Conrad struck him dead and his entourage slaughtered. This was followed by massive expulsion of populations from the land. A section of the Hebrew population that supported the steward during the conflict became the Jews. Conrad and his supporters parted ways with the steward and so they became Protestants, which is also a Jewish sect. When the exiles returned, Conrad joined them. The steward and his associates were defeated, and the Caesar's son became king while Conrad was made the high priest and grand vizier. Those who returned from exile were the Israelites. Around 3 years later, the vizier overthrew the king and exiled the entire family to Arabia. The Caesar's family, his son the king and their followers became the Zionists. The Zionists were associated with Judah or were supporters of the Tudors, while the Jews are followers of the steward and the grand vizier.